Hey guys, welcome to the stream tonight. We're going to be checking out the Prophet 600 from 1982 and shooting it out against the Kawai SX-240 from about 1984 or so. These are two top shelf vintage synthesizers, and they represent two different price points, but similar features in a certain way. They're both 2 oscillator per voice. The Prophet 600 is VCOs, or voltage controlled oscillators, meaning the tuning is controlled by analog voltage, versus the SX240 has digital control over the oscillators, but they're still analog oscillators. So it's going to be a difference. Prophet 600 has 6 voices, one more than a Prophet 5. The SX240 has 8 voices that you can dual layer, so you can stack them up, turn into a 4-voice synth that's super big. Very excited to be checking these out. And so the first thing I'm going to do is just set this synthesizer kind of back into a neutral state. I love using the Prophet 600 actually just in a sort of, I like using it where I'm just using it in manual mode, which means just the front panel is live and we can just set everything up. There we go. And just a quick little tune there. And we should be perfectly volume matched. Set it up before the stream so that we could do this comparison. How's everything sounding, you guys? Really excited for you guys being here. We'll start with the sawtooth, and like we usually do, go through that, mess around with the filter a bit, and then continue forth with checking out the similarities and differences. That's the roadmap for tonight's stream. Not hugely different. Let's start at middle C. Got them in perfect tune. Really not a huge difference in terms of sawtooth sounds. This synthesizer is using SSM components, so it's going to have that more old school sound. So there is this kind of funny thing where if you're a Prophet 5 snob, you are into the Prophet 5 Rev 1 and Rev 2, which were made with SSM chips. The Prophet 5 Rev 3 was made with CEM chips. The Prophet 600 was also made with CEM chips. Some people said the Prophet 5 Rev 3 sounded colder, which is one of those horrible slurs that you can throw against a mid-80s synthesizer, analog synthesizer. So in this case, the SX240 has those SSM chips, but they're digitally controlled. So you sort of win some and lose some in this comparison. Checking out the... let's see. I'm looking at the Dead Man Walking says it's using the SSM 2044 VCF, right? Which is different than the 2040 VCF in the Prophet 5, 1 and 2, but you get a little bit of a similar tone. We'll get into that into the filter section. But just comparing the sawtooth at middle C. To my ears, I'm hearing the SX240 has a much... I shouldn't say much, but it's got a noticeably thicker tone to the oscillator. There's just a little bit more warmth to it. And another thing I should note is this is a Gleegly modified Prophet 600, which is probably what you want if you're in the market for a Prophet 600. Also, by the way, I should also mention that you can get a Prophet 600 for about $25... What are words tonight? $1,250 right now on Reverb. Conversely, the SX240, these bad boys are clocking in at about $3,400 on Reverb right now for one that's in mint condition like this. Everything restored. I actually had the switches all replaced on the synthesizer and everything. So it's like brand new, essentially, aside from this one little chip right here. It is a stellar condition synth. And most of the difference in price, I think, just comes down to the fact that there were so few SX240s made, less than 1,000 of these bad boys. So there shouldn't be too much of a difference, but I brought up the Glee mod for a reason, and that reason is that I have right now the VCF limit function turned on. So what that does is it doesn't allow the synthesizer to be quite as bright as it is factory. And that's because the Prophet 600 is very, very bright factory, and it doesn't sound as good, I think, as when you limit the VCF just a little bit. So anyways, moving down an octave. I mean, I don't really think at this octave range there's much of a difference. I don't think one's better than the other. What do you guys think? How's it sounding out there? Does it sound like one has a noticeable advantage? I'd say in the low end, they're pretty similar. Also, one thing you might notice is that on these high notes, there's a little bit of noise coming in. I don't know what's going on, so I'll probably have to get this just looked at under the hood real quick. It's not something too much of a thing, but now that I pointed it out, you guys might notice it. So that's there. Slightly off tune. Let me see. It's about as in tune as they're going to get. Yeah, so that's about right. We'll give it the chord test, because sometimes you can hear more of a difference when you play chords. Yeah, they're definitely close. I would never buy one over the other because of the sawtooth tone in this case. However, you can hear more when you play the chords, actually, that the Prophet 600 has a much brighter high mid sort of tone, and that the Prophet SX-240 has a much darker. The high end is similar, but it has more of a low mid thing going on, right? Do you guys hear that? Maybe a little more scooped. These are 3340 CM VCOs, so these are the same VCOs in the Oberheim OBXA, and like I said, the Prophet 5. Rev 3, I think the Jupiter 6 uses the same 3340s, SH101. Can't think if there's any other synthesizers that use 3340s, but very famous VCOs. And they damn sound good. Listening to these DCOs... I think they sound pretty good. I don't know if I might even like them better. Zozilla does. What I'm listening for is the difference in the phase here, where we're getting some different rates of beating depending on whether I'm playing a third or a fifth. You'll notice that on a fifth, the beating is very slow, and on a third, it's faster. So here is a little bit of a difference between the VCOs and the DCOs, although honestly, the DCOs on the SX-240 sound a little more wild than I was expecting. What are you guys hearing? Okay, so yeah, so Jerome is right. This is the result of equal temperament, where we're hearing, different intervals will have different amounts of being slightly out of tune, because equal temperament actually does take instruments a little bit out of tune, but it takes all the notes equally out of tune. That way you can modulate keys and stuff like that. So a lot of instruments back in like Johann Sebastian Bach's day were justified tuning, and that is like perfectly tuned, but it's harder to modulate keys and things like that. So this is a good one actually, because this is very tight on the SX-240. Zozilla says, if you didn't tell me it's DCOs, I would have thought they were VCOs. Yeah, I'm sort of picking up on that too. Very slow. Let's see if we get any more wilderness out of the Prophet 600. We do, but it's subtle. It's... Yeah, we can get a really tight tune there that on the 600 we have just a little bit of breath. In the Glee mod, you can actually control the oscillator spread and get a little bit of wonkiness in there. But I didn't think that was fair to compare that because, of course, I kind of want to talk about how most people, if you were to buy a Prophet 600, what you could expect it to sound like, and same thing with the SX-240. The SX-240 doesn't have any way to add any sort of DCO wonkiness, unfortunately, although of course you can get there with detune between two oscillators and the LFO, but that difference is there. On a very tight chord like this, pretty tight on both. Microphone went flying away. By the way, can I get some fucking cheers in the chat? Can I get some scum cheers? I appreciate everybody for making Wednesday nights here on YouTube the best place for scum snobs to be. Can I get some scum snobs in the chat? I appreciate it, guys. Cheers. Oh yeah. Need a little Pathfinder to get this party started. So I know for some people this is very subtle stuff, but for us synth snobs, little differences like this actually make a huge impact in the final sound. We can cover the oscillators, but they're kind of complicated, the differences here. So I'm going to take this moment actually just to get into the filter section. So we're going to go ahead and pick a low note. Let's go with the lowest one, and we'll just do a nice filter sweep. And we're going to use the envelope so we get really smooth, buttery filter sweeps. One thing I like to do is set the attack and decay of the envelope to 50%, envelope up all the way, cut off all the way down, and just hear what we've got on both synthesizers. So same idea here. I'm going to turn the EG all the way up, cut off all the way down. I could also use this stereoping controller here. That's actually quite useful for things like the attack, decay, sustain, and release. But everything else is not so different. So let's just compare the difference right now. That's the envelope 50/50 on the Prophet 600 on the SX-240. So immediately you'll notice that the envelope on the Prophet 600 is pretty short at this range. Now, usually we talk about this sort of thing later, but why don't we take a moment and just compare how tight the envelopes can get. So that's at 50%. Nice and slow decay. Let's bring it down to 2 o'clock. On the Prophet 600, we basically just have a click. We have a little bit more tone coming from the SX-240 there. And interestingly, this is interesting. We really can't get it because the cutoff doesn't go as deep on the SX-240. It might sound like it's not going as fast, but it's just the cutoff isn't going as deep. So I suppose I could try matching that. Very similar at that amount. But then again, going back up to maybe, let's go for like, I don't know, 3.5. Sorry, wrong one, 3.5. So this brings me to one of my gripes about the Prophet 600, which I always notice when I'm messing with the synthesizer, which is the envelopes. Even with the Glee mod, they just never behave exactly how I want. So listening to the shape and how wonderful, exponential, and analog this sounds versus it's hard to get that sweet spot. It's either too short or too long. Also, the VCF amount doesn't go as high either, which, I mean, in some sense it's worse because you can't take the cutoff as low, and the EG amount, or how much the filter opens, can't go as high. But doesn't that just sound beautiful? So why don't we try and get that? So I've got to bring this down to like 1.5 to get it in the neighborhood. And I don't think I can get it perfect. Got to bring it down a little further. But it's just really nice pluck here. So just off of that, I'm really not feeling that there is exactly what I'm looking for when it comes to that. Now we can go into the amp envelope shape. We've got filter envelope shape too. So I could go to tape and then filter envelope shape, which is, let me see. Oh, I might be messing around with some stuff. Might do that later in the stream. How long for each to warm up, I'm wondering, Brian says. They both pretty much sound pretty good right out of the batch. Yeah, it's like you need a little more. Yeah, it's just... All right, let's see if that fixed it. Oh, there we go. So. Okay, so I've just changed the filter envelope from linear to fast. And now they're pretty close. What do you guys think? Still a little bit of an edge here. Now it's pretty much in the ballpark. So I guess with the Gliggly mod, you do want to put it into the fast or more exponential analog sounding shape. To me, that made a huge difference in the sound. Let's go ahead and two tape 5 here, amp shape to fast, just to make sure that we've got that going too. I think in this case, I still prefer the SX-240, but I wouldn't buy one over the other when you have the Gliggly mod installed on this, where you can put it into that fast shape. Now, an unmodified Prophet 600 will not be able to give you that envelope action. So hopefully that'll fix some of my issues that I have with the amplifier as well. I'm going to turn the volume up on both of these. And let's go ahead and... So we know that that's that. Why don't we add some attack and decay? Let's add some more. Wow, that is slow. And that's another issue I have with the Prophet 600 is the resolution. And you'll notice that I will struggle on this because you've got digital control and you just don't have as many values as you might like. Now, that kind of hurts when you're doing a comparison. When you're programming, it's really not as big of a deal. You'll also notice that the attack is a lot slower than the decay. Comparing that with the attack and decay over here. Yeah, I'm noticing that too. I can bring this down. The max envelopes are probably going to go to the SX-240. Try to match that here. So you'll notice I have similar values over here on the SX-240, but I have to bring the attack a little lower. And again, I mean, one thing that is going to hurt this is that the EG amount is all the way up, and we're still not going as low as the Prophet 600. So there's just a really constrained set of values that the VCF can go to on the SX-240, which is kind of a shame because I like it when a filter closes very deeply, right? And we can't even get there with the key tracking or anything. So it's just interesting. Let me make sure the sustain is, yep, it's all the way down on the VCF. So this just is what it is. Let's go ahead and jump over and add some resonance, right? Everybody's favorite. We'll go to about 9 o'clock on both of them. And I will shut up between these. That way you guys can hear it because, of course, our brains are like goldfish. So if I speak in between the filter sweeps, it's very easy to forget. Your brain won't hold on to that information. Tone Pusher, welcome. How's it going, my friend? Kawai sounds better, but it's so damn close. At this point, I think it's a matter of interface you prefer. 600 is much sexier, though. Yeah, so the interface on the 600 is great. You'll notice the interface on the SX-240 is not bad. I don't really think you need a programmer for it. I think it's okay. But I actually like using it. I much prefer the look of the SX-240. I don't know how well it comes across on camera, but it just has this beautiful teal and orange color scheme. Anyways. Very similar. I think you can already hear a difference in the bass frequencies. So let's go ahead and move on to... I'm going to increase the EG amount. It jumped. You guys saw that I didn't touch the knob there, and it just jumped up to that higher value. Fortunately, we've just lost a lot of the volume there, which of course we could make up with the sub-oscillator, the second DCO, all of that stuff. But this is just the nature of this synth. You lose a lot with resonance. So just past 50%, we start getting into the self-oscillating territory. Let's go ahead and take this into self-oscillating. So much bigger jump there. I'll actually turn the volume down on the Kawai now. It's almost entirely the sound of the filter. You can hear much more of the actual sound. Dead Man Walking, spitting the knowledge. Appreciate that. Can we get some scum snobs in the chat? I appreciate the blowfish there. So, past that, we don't really have many usable values. This is basically our max resonance, right around, I don't know, 60%. Which we can emulate. It's interesting. Increasing the decay here, trying to see, because there's this beautiful thing happening as that envelope falls on the SX-240 where it really picks apart those last few harmonics slowly. Very beautiful. Pretty much there. Hypothesis, how's it going, my friend? Let's go up an octave and see if we, because I noticed on this one, it seems like we get different flavors that you don't always hear on these synths. Zuzilla says the SX acts like an Oberon on this sweep. Either too much or too little resonance here to match. What do we think, guys? If you had to buy one off the filter sweep, what would it be? Dr. Synth, welcome to the stream. Increase the decay a little. Robert Accurso, welcome to the stream. Only noticeable in the AB, I'm sure. Yeah, that is true. They're actually very similar. My boy Hans Volta's here. How's it going, my friend? Let's play some chords. Not that you'll really hear them. I definitely need to add playing chords as like a major feature of doing filter sweeps and things like that. I noticed it when we've been doing the oscillator comparisons. You know, middle C to middle C, often you don't get it, but once you start playing some chords, Sorry, I'll turn the Prophet 600 up a bit. think it's pretty clear. The SX-240 is just pulling apart a little bit more musicality. It's just got a little bit more harmonics to the filter. It's really beautiful. I'm actually surprised how different they sound with chords as opposed to just playing the single notes. Because playing the single notes, I was like, yeah, they're virtually indistinguishable. But here, I do hear... Dub wants to know, can I get a little filter audio mod? Yeah, so I believe on the SX-240 we can't do any FM. I don't see it anywhere, although I do remember last time we checked out this synth, I couldn't find something, but I don't believe there's any FM here. We do have like a cross mod feature on this synth to get some sort of bright stuff. But so without a doubt, that's going to be something that, you know, opens this synth up a lot. So if I just increase the, you know, some FM. 40 Thieves, welcome to the stream. Yeah, it's basically cross mod, but that's an area where we could hear, you know, probably a pretty big difference between these guys. So if I had to say off the filter alone, which is probably the most important part of how a synth is going to sound, the SX-240 actually performs a little bit above what I was expecting. And you know, the Poly 6 has this same filter in it, the SSM-44, and you do get that heritage. The Poly 6 is a little bit more wild. The SX-240 is going to sound more digitally controlled. But what's interesting is the Prophet 600 to my ear sounds even more digitally controlled than that. So even though the oscillators are VCOs, the filter on both of these is digitally controlled, meaning it's a digital envelope controlling the filter. But it's a little bit more analog sounding on the SX-240, which is surprising to me because I think of this synth, because it's a DCO, as being the more, you know, digital sounding synth, if you want to call it that, cold sounding. But there still is a little bit of magic in those SSM filters. What should be said, though, is the Chroma Polaris, which is just off camera here, has the exact same filter as the Prophet 600 and easily sounds better than both of these synths. So it goes to show that it's not just what brand or what even model of filter goes into these synths. It's also how they're implemented. A lot of it, I think, has to do with gain staging. Last week's live stream, checking out the DW8000 versus the Ensoniq SQ80, it was crazy to me how hot the filter in the SQ80 sounds and is. And going back and rewatching the stream, it was my opinion that the DW8000 is just pretty hard to touch in terms of value. However, those really like crank the resonance filter growly sounds on the SQ80, pretty much untouchable, even from the analog synths. They sound so good. Also, congratulations, Dub. You sold your SQ80, didn't you? I'm sad because I featured it in an upcoming video. Deadman Walking says the SX-240 has real hardware envelope generators where Prophet 600 is entirely software generated. This is all very synth snobby stuff, but I actually do think it makes a difference, Deadman. Congratulations on selling that. I'm sad just because I was hoping my new video, which will hopefully be coming out on Saturday, was going to sell it for you, but I'm just happy that you sold it. Very musical. Great, but you know, a slight edge to that. So let's bring the filter down. Probably need to bring that down a bit. Okay, now I can bring this up and does this sound about right to you guys? All right, so we're not going to use the filter envelopes at all on either of these synths for the next section. I'm going to just go over and add some release. Not to the filter, to the envelope. And I'm going to add some attack. Now, here's going to be the interesting thing, and I really want to delve into this. I apologize. We're going to be spending a lot of times in the weeds this stream, but that's because we've done so many Versus streams on this channel that you guys are high level. You have graduated from Synth Snob school, and I'm giving you all certificates right fucking now that says that you can go into the world, and next time you're at a bar, you can look over at whatever gendered person you're attracted to and be like, yo, I'm a fucking synth snob. Vulture Culture said so. So anyways, my gripe with the 600 are these envelopes. I don't fucking like them, but let's check them out in fast mode and see if that helps the issue. So right now, I'm deliberately not using the filter envelope, which is where I spend most of my time when it comes to sound design. But if you've watched any of my videos on sound design, you'll know that I actually think the secret to really wonderful sounds that gets missed a lot is paying attention to the amplifier envelope, because volume is your most powerful tool when it comes to sound shaping. It's just not as exciting as the filter, so I feel like a lot of synthesists spend a lot of time in the filter envelope section, but it's really the VCA envelope that's going to give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to coming up with what type of sound you want. So I would encourage you, next time you go to make a pluck, start in the amplifier section and then attack the filter section. Sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes you want the, you know, just the sustain all the way up and you want to make all of the motion happen with the filter, but you'd be surprised. You'll get some different sounds if you start there. So anyways, these envelopes, really great. Just taking the front end of that off versus it's more of like a key sound than by bringing it up to 40 out of 90. It has this like really wonderful, the way it just shaves off the front end there. Hypothesis, that little vulture skull by your handle, that's all the badge you'll ever need. That's all the street cred you'll ever need. Anyways, let's see if we can match that sound. So I just want to double check here. Decay doesn't really matter in this case. Sustains all the way up. So we're going to try and get that sort of a sound. Don't need quite as much release. I guess I should turn the attack all the way down just so we can match the release stage first. Come on. See, I need that. I need that finer resolution. See how it's just fading out nicely? Oh, don't do this to me. I'm pressing the wrong knob. That's why nothing's happening. It was my fault. Very stupid. Let's get a little more. Okay, wait. Wait, now is it too long? It's too long. Oh, we're really close. I think we're there. Starsky Carr did a good analysis of these envelopes, and there's still like a weird little tail at the end. Just slightly long, and I feel like if I bring it down, it's just going to be too fast. Yeah, it's just too fast, so let's go a little longer. It's okay, we can match it here. We've got finer control on the SX-240. Oh, we can bring it down. It's very close. It's good enough. Sarah asks, are they that bad, all linear, or the range is small? So the story of these two synths is you've got better resolution on the SX-240, but you've got much better range on the Prophet 600. You can go like deeper with the filter and more envelope amount for sure. 100%. All day, every day. Slightly shorter. It's good enough. Now, let's go ahead and get that attack back to about 44. Is that what I said? Ah, it's so good. Let's see if we can get something like that. Now, I'm at 50% attack. So, the Gleegly mod, I've noticed, seems to have fixed. I would have this thing where if you press the same note, in linear mode, you'll get this thing where even if you have a slow attack, you can still hear like almost the, if the whole stage hasn't gone all the way through, you'll still be able to hear the re-trigger of that oscillator. Basically, you'll lose your slow attack on a second note if it's using that same voice, right? But here with fast mode, it actually seems to be fixing that issue. And I have to say, now, the higher mid-range sound of the Prophet 600 is really speaking to me. And Dub points out that there's more reverb in the mix tonight. And I just kind of did that because it's my stream and I can do what I want. But I know a lot of people want to hear the oscillators dry. We've just shot out and done so many reviews of both of these synths dry that I thought, fuck it, let's just make it pretty. It's got a little that sizzle. And I'd like to point out that that's with the limiting on the filter. So it's actually even brighter than that, which I don't think sounds good. I think it sounds better, a little darker. I found that out when we shot it out against the Matrix 6 over here, where it's for whatever reason, just a little bit helps it not sound cold, you know, or whatever that people will say. Slightly louder here. There we go. I mean, it was quieter here. Do you hear a little bit of a... There I could hear it when I played like a little bit of the envelope, not starting from 0, but instead starting from a less than 0 value. Should have said greater than 0 value. Exactly what you want every time that you hear the envelopes here. Couldn't get it to do it again, so it's pretty much solved. Maybe it's just a trick of my mind, but so the SX-240 is at max cutoff. The Prophet 600 is, like I said, Sari, it's actually less than max. The Gleegly mod allows you to limit the maximum that the filter will go, which is kind of crazy to think about because it does get even brighter than that, but I think it sounds much better in this mode. So the Gleegly mod really does, just for like the envelope shape difference, and that filter mod makes a huge difference. I know I would not like the Prophet 600 without the Gleegly mod, because it's right on that line for me as far as, I mean, obviously it's a phenomenal piece of history, but I am the most fortunate person in the world. If you look around this room, there's nothing but privilege. I am just very lucky to have so many vintage instruments that I can be a little picky, and I think that is part of what people come to this channel for, aside from, you know, just the sizzling oscillator sounds. And that's to hear the opinion of someone who's got all of these treats to play with, because you do start to notice little things. And the Prophet 600 is a little bit of a thorn in my side synthesizer. So, yeah, I mean, we could increase the release a little further. Very easy to program this synth, by the way, even without the hands-on control. Go for a pretty long one. Let's see if we can get there. Someone asked for maximum earlier, so let's just see real quick what the difference is. Sounds like the maximum. Basically is infinite on the SX-240. Let's see if value of 99 is any better. I mean, it can go to infinite, almost infinite, at values above 90, which is pretty crazy. Versus here, I would describe that little cutoff at the end there was not the synthesizer necessarily. It was probably the noise gate that I have, which is set to like negative 80 decibels, right? But It's amazing how our ears can actually hear that difference. It sounded like a noise gate closing and not the envelope just dying. But so, yeah, I mean, as far as like, if you care about having almost infinite envelopes, the SX-240 could do that. But the Prophet 600, that envelope's more than fine as far as I'm concerned. I mean, even an envelope of 70 is probably long enough for most cases, and going for 70 on the Prophet 600, it's shorter. Yeah, so they're pretty much in the same neighborhood. So anyways, I wanted to just come up with this sort of basic string amplifier setting to then be able to discuss the oscillators, because they're going on here. On both of these synths, we can turn both the sawtooth and square waves on at the same time. So let me set that to pulse width, and then I'm going to bring the pulse width all the way down on this synth. And then I've got the pulse width all the way off here. And pulse width at 50% on this synth is what we're going to actually want. So we're still listening to just one oscillator, right? It's a kind of counterintuitive thing here. So we've got two wave shapes on, but one oscillator on both synths. Interestingly, on the Prophet 600, we'll actually lose a lot of volume, where if I'm just sawtooth, it's quieter, so I'll just boost it up a little bit. Hearing phase cancellation because it's the two waves should stay in phase. It's not a separate oscillator. Any detuning you're hearing or phase cancellation is actually between the voices and not the oscillators. So the first thing I noticed is that the SX-240 sounds a little fatter. Not that that's, yeah, Aquatic points it out, a little harmonically richer, a little thicker, but some of that's just like pulse width, so. We can even change the pulse width on both of these guys. Sounds. So it just sounds a little thicker, but. If I turn the sawtooth off, we can see if they are both through 0, which the Prophet 600 certainly is. We lose it about from 5 to 7.5. That's our whole range, right? So that's not a whole lot of the pulse width here. I don't believe the SX-240 goes through 0, at least on its own. Yeah, it does not. So it's as thin as it gets. We might be able to go through 0 with the LFO, right? So if we put the pulse wave into pulse width modulation, and then control the LFO speed. Nope, we still can't go through 0. Which is interesting, super interesting. Going back over to the Prophet 600, we can then create pulse width modulation by increasing the amount. It's interesting how much quieter the square. Oh, did I turn the volume down? Can we get some scum cheers for Chris watching the stream at work? That's what I'm talking about. Can I get some scum cheers in the chat? Kind of thinner sounding. Let's see if I bring the pulse width down to about 50%. This interesting kind of non-pure sinusoidal thing going on with the LFO. Same thing happens with the Chroma Polaris. So just listening to the pulse width on its own, the square wave on its own, with pulse width modulation, there's really just nothing. This one is beautiful, but it is thin. Which is fascinating because when you put the sawtooth wave in there, which we can do, I think it's just the sawtooth is louder on the SX-240. Yeah, I mean, like, listen to the volume difference again. Even if I turn the pulse width all the way up, law of awe, I'd love to have a JX8P. You guys have actually voted that the JX8P is the GOAT of the JX synths, which is surprising to me, but that seems to be the consensus. Prophet 600 sounds thicker when it comes to, like, or I should say, let's use the word lush here. Lush is a good word to describe pulse width modulation. Thicker probably comes from when you're using a sub oscillator. So we can do that on the SX-240. So let's turn the sub oscillator on. And we have no equivalent function except to turn a square wave on down an octave. So, and even then we can't route the pulse width to only A, which is what we'd really need to do, but there's been times where when we do a test where we're just shooting out like bass lines, where that sub oscillator is really helpful. But in terms of like sort of a PWM string sort of thing, that sub, like just the richness. I mean, aside from like it being a little louder. I mean, I hate to say it. This one sounds fucking symphonic, and this just sounds... Then again... In the lower register, this holds together better, though. Up there, but dropping down to that G sharp or A flat is a little rough. And here it sounds fine, right? It's okay. So let's go ahead and tune oscillator B back up. To turn the sub oscillator off, but turn the second DCO on the SX-240. So we can have a total of 2 DCOs plus a sub on the SX-240. We can only have 2 VCOs without a sub on the Prophet 600. So let's see how this sounds in comparison. Really tight tuning, so it's not going to sound great till we add some movement. And as usual, let's turn the, let's go back to just the sawtooth wave for now, and then we'll go back, we'll see. Kind of close there, so shooting out the Prophet 600 versus the Matrix 6. If you were there for that stream, will you go ahead and drop, I don't know, just drop an emoji in the chat if you were there for the Prophet 600 versus Matrix 6 stream, or a comment down below the video if you're watching this in the future. But we were comparing the DCOs versus VCOs, and I thought that was a pretty fair comparison. They're both CEM oscillators through very similar filters, and it was possible to notice a difference between the VCOs and the DCOs. Most people in the chat preferred the sound of the Prophet 600's raw oscillators to the Matrix 6. when we're talking detune here, not really the sound of the oscillators, but just the detune and, you know, the sauvage nature of the tuning. However, it was pretty close. The Matrix 6, it was, for me, it was kind of arguable because I kind of liked the very, very slightly tighter tuning on the Matrix 6 allowed you to push the detune a little further without it necessarily getting seasick. Conversely, on the SX-240, the tuning is pretty locked in. I feel like you can hear the difference. Nick Destruct, how you doing, my friend? It's just really beautiful sounding. And then I think if I turn the coarse tune up a little bit, I don't know if that'll fix it. See, it's seasick. So we've been hearing differences between the two synths so far, and this is a difference that I think, you know, we're pretty, how long have we been streaming now? For a bit. We've been going for a while. There's going to be some noobs who watch the first hour of this stream and they were like, I do not hear a fucking difference between these things. They both sound virtually identical, or where they're not identical, you could probably fix it by just how you move the knobs or whatever. This is the first time where I'm truly at a loss to sort of recreate. I mean, we heard some differences in the filter, we heard some differences in the envelope, but with the Gleegly mod, we got the envelopes close enough on the Prophet 600 that I think only the connoisseur of synths, aka the people who watch this channel, will be able to hear the difference. But this detune difference is pretty startling, and it's a bigger difference between these two synths than this synth and its cousin, the Matrix 6, which is interesting to me because the Matrix 6 costs about half of the SX-240. You know, and when it comes to this sort of thing, this matters. It doesn't sound bad. Oh, you know, there is one difference, is DCO2, I think, is always a square wave on the SX-240. So just to keep the comparison fair, I've set it over to square wave here. It's the way that sometimes you catch a voice and they're further apart, and so you get like a real nice warble, and then sometimes you catch a voice and you get like a slow phase. I'm a slut for that, like that random variation in there that keeps your ear guessing. I think that's a lot of what makes the difference between, you know, a great synthesizer and a cheap VST, let's say, where, you know, a VST or something like that. I'm not trying to say the SX-240 is a VST at all, by the way. I mean, it's still an incredible instrument, but a great analog synth will give you that ear candy that keeps your mind hooked on it. And there's this hypnotic thing that happens where you're listening to a synth and you're like, I'm really just zoned in on that, right? So let's kick on the sub oscillator and let's turn the pulse wave on, and so now what I'm going to try to do is we've got DCO2 detune from DCO1. we've got the sub oscillator, and we have pulse width modulation and the sawtooth wave. So we've got saw square, we've got saw and a pulse modulated square, a non-pulse modulated square maybe, and a sub oscillator, which is going to be a square as well. And the idea here is going to be when we throw in the kitchen sink with the SX-240, will we get a sound that sounds better than the Prophet 600? Because at the end of the day, Prophet 600, we're going to kind of be stuck with just the two oscillators. So let's go ahead and bring this up the range here just a little bit. Matrix 6s are going for about $1,450 right now. Dr. Synth wants to know, can I play a single note comparison? Sure. Let me go ahead and slow the LFO down a bit, I think. Hey, cheers, Mike. I appreciate you hanging out with us. I think it's just the detune is a little... In this case, it's like the detune for me sounds better. A little less detune on the SX-240. There's really, I don't think I can get there. I don't think this synthesizer is going to get there in terms of just sounding huge. Let's slow the attack down slightly. As you stack up the oscillators on the Prophet 600, it starts to sound like thicker and darker. This synth started off sounding a lot darker when you just compared, you know, the raw sawtooth or whatever. So let's bring the cutoff down a bit. There's really no comparison for me, for what I like, to my hearing. Now, the SX-240 is going to rip in a mix because it's got this, like, cutting high end that's coming through. But it's so funny to me because the oscillators on their own sounded more low mid-rangey. But adding it all together, you're starting to get there. So now we've got a string amplifier, but let's create a pluck filter sound. So the idea being here that the amplifier and the envelopes for the amplifier and the filter are going to be doing different things. So let's bring the cutoff down on both of these guys. And then I need to go into the filter VCF and just turn that down. actually just prefer it with less detune. I think it's just something about the way this one... Zozilla, thank you for staying up till 4:30 in the fucking morning. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a good rest. Could compare it to the Juno 60, but you know, at that point you don't have the separate oscillators, so you're not going to be able to get the lushness on any Juno synth that you're getting here. And in a weird way, that's what's so interesting about the SX-240 compared to every other synth that I'm aware of, is it really does seem to be kind of the missing evolutionary link between the 2 VCO per voice synths and the one oscillator plus a sub synthesizer that you get with, you know, whether it's a Jupiter 4, Poly 6, or any of the Junos have that sort of architecture. Because with the sub oscillator, the multiple wave shapes, but you can't detune them, but you can add that other DCO in. So that's the interesting part, is the first row on the tone generator here, you know, very much is just like you're going to get Juno-esque tones, but then you can do cross mod and have that second DCO on, which is interesting. Now we're going to cheat real quick, and we're going to turn on the ensemble. So we haven't mentioned that so far, but this synthesizer does have a really great 3-bucket brigade delay ensemble effect. That's going to give you that Roland VP330. I like to think of it as the Blade Runner strings type effect. And so that's obviously something the Prophet 600 doesn't have. Usually when I'm doing these comparisons, guys, I'll focus on the similarities so we can pick apart the actual sound. But in this case, because the SX-240 is struggling a little bit to sound as full, I'm just curious if we can do anything to get the SX-240 to sound as lush as the Prophet 600. This is a stereo ensemble, but I have it running in mono right now to keep it fair, so... One of the things I've noticed about the ensemble is I just looked at the high pass filter. I had this like knot in my stomach. I was like, did I have the high pass filter on the whole time? I didn't. The ensemble does cut a little of the low end out. So again, it's not going to really fix that if you need that low end. This is a beautiful sound, but it's just not giving me the fuck job of the Prophet 600. That's just all day, every day, isn't it? You know, it's just a beautiful sound. I really can't compare that. Key mode, we could put it into dual. Whoa. That's not the mode I want. That was adding a new layer. How do I just duplicate it? I might have to actually like have programmed the separate thing. Ugh. Yeah. You can octave up the lower patch. That's the thing. I mean, you can stack This is like a bitimbral synth in the sense that you can stack it, but... Wendigo, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I mean, that is the interesting thing about doing these shootouts without listening to them with drums and all of that sort of stuff is a couple of my favorite synths, like the DW8000 and the Poly 6, they both fucking crush it in these one-on-one comparisons. Generally speaking, the synth that has more bass is going to sound more full, more powerful, more charismatic. However, once you're in a mix, I mean, the DW8000 is just like far away. You just get sub frequencies, but you don't really hear the synth. So sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want something that has a little bit more bite, and this certainly has bite. Let's increase the resonance a bit. And see if we can get there. Increase the release here and bring the volume down a bit. That's like, I have the attack up to 6. I shouldn't be able to hear that. So that's like a little of that thing. It's a shame this thing loses so much volume. Because it actually sounds fucking... Actually, I might be able to just turn the... Oh, I can't get my ring past there. There's a... Let's turn the volume down a bit. I turned the hotness of the synth up. Sort of sound going again, where the SX-240 is sort of pulling into the lead, where like really hitting that filter resonance sounds beautiful on the SX-240, And obviously the filter sounds great on the Prophet 600, but when you kind of match the resonance, this one's value is either a little less resonance than this or a little too much. To me, that's just a little ice picky, and then good. Attorney, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. Just trying to do my job here. This thing certainly has the advantage when it comes to the oscillators. When it comes to the envelopes and the filter, this thing has a small advantage. I don't know that I think overall that filter advantage is that critical, but this sound is very good. That's probably like one of the best of that type of sounds you're ever going to get, right? I mean, that really does sound gorgeous. The SSM filter, yeah, it does very, very slightly eke out the CM filter. This CM filter, I don't think it would sound better than the Ensoniq SQ80. I don't think it's going to sound better than even the Matrix 6. Probably, certainly not the Polaris. But here in this comparison, you get just a little bit more of that, just wonderful filter growl, and it's there. Ensemble for you. Oh, whoopsie daisy. I mean, for me, the ensemble is good for that Blade Runner string sound, but aside from that, has been a little nerdier than normal, where we've been paying attention to very subtle differences, but I do think these differences matter. I do think it matters. And I know, like I said before, you know, we on this channel, everybody in the chat here, Dubstation's been a member for 20 months. That's freaking crazy. Really appreciate it, man. Just sponsored somebody to become a member of this channel, so I think that'll show up in a second here. The thing is that these little differences do matter, and they're subtle, but they're there. And I hope that when you're watching this channel, and more importantly, listening, right, to the synths, not my voice, it inspires you to check out your own synths and really dig in as deeply as we're doing here. Because if you're not getting the most out of your synths. You might think you are. You might crank the resonance and detune the sawtooths and go, oh, I made a pretty sound. And it might be very pretty. But when you dig in this deep, you do find things and subtleties and differences between synths that help you craft something. Because now it's like, if I want this sound, I am going to go SX-240 for this particular thing. It is time for a drink. Let's go ahead. I got to finish this drink off. So can I get one more cheers tonight? Thank you to Dub very much. The devil is, in fact, in the details. Can I get a cheers for everybody who's been hanging out this long? It's been a lot of fun. So cheers. So yeah, is it the most fascinating stream I've ever done? Probably not, but the thing is, if I give it just a little bit more resonance, value 49 is actually very nice. It had a little of that sharpness to it. So let's just bring that down a bit. Still there, little 40, gonna hit that 47. It's very hard to hit that value. So 47 is the number I'm looking for here, apparently. Still fucking heard it. Bring it down to 46. I don't want any sharpness. I don't want any ear pickiness. I just want... It's probably the differences between the voices here where I'm just getting... just that the SX-240 is losing a little bit more bass, so you really get those highlighted low mid harmonics because they're not competing with the bass there. But you do notice that difference. And whereas the Prophet 600 sounds fuller even with the resonance crank. So, I mean, a lot of the times that's what I kind of like. I like a nice full sounding synth. But in this case, just the way it's pulling apart those harmonics. I'm a much better guitar player than I am a keyboardist, so that might be helpful. Little slight, like the amplifier shouldn't be is starting at a greater than 0 thing, and that bothers me. But it's subtle. I mean, it's not the type of thing to really like sell a synthesizer over. Both of these synths sound great on these respective patches. They're close, but it's kind of fun to have a patch that's pushing both of the synths sort of to their limit and not being able to take either synth all the way to where they can match, even though they should be pretty similar here. Yeah. So I think I'm going to call it there for tonight. That's a good place for us to do a poll. So I want to know from you guys, which of these two synths sound better? Often I will do a comparison and we'll talk about, you know, which synth would you buy for the money? But I don't think that's as interesting for tonight because, you know, the SX-240 is more expensive because it's rarer, right? So I'm going to start a poll and which synth sounds better? And I'm going to go Prophet 600 or SX-240. Now, I just want to know what you guys think because I always have my own opinion. Last week, I was in contention with the majority vote, which was most of you guys preferred the sound of the SQ80. I thought the DW8000 was probably the overall, for me, more musically complete package, although it doesn't have nearly the range of the SQ80. And weirdly, I would say that just like the drive of the filter is so beautiful. So it's like I go back and forth on the filter because the filter sounds so perfect on the DW8000, but it's not as nasty. And I do like nasty sometimes, so it's an interesting thing. Yeah, the SX-240 Parbs is just like way overpriced. The Prophet 600 is easily the best value 2 VCO per voice vintage synth you're going to get. Right now, you can get one for about $100 more than a sequential 6-track, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Yeah. Fun thing to play synths with hammer-ons and pull-offs, I can only imagine. Deadman Walking says the Pro 800 sounds better. That's a hot take. I would like to do a shootout between the Pro 800 and the Prophet 600 at some point. I just don't feel right buying it from Amazon, like knowing I'm going to return it. So I'd much prefer to hopefully find somebody who I can borrow one from or something like that. Someone did have one in my area. And I thought about lowballing them, like trying to get it from them for like $200 or something just to see. Wendigo goes for the 6. Brian asks, would it be a waste to use either for bass? To only use either for bass? I know for me, the SX-240 really shines obviously with cranking the resonance so you get that SSM filter growl that's very hard to get from a synth that doesn't have that particular type of chip in it. And then the other thing I think I'd probably end up using it for a lot is just string sounds, like string machine type sounds, because that ensemble does sound really gorgeous and puts it kind of in its own category. The Poly 6 has an ensemble too, but it's very warm, whereas this one's very bright. So I think for like that string sound, for me, ironically, I would use the SX-240 for that. But then why not just get a cheaper string synth, you know? other than the fact that you have, it's polyphonic. You can use much more control. Yeah, there's just more Poly 600 or Prophet 600s, and that's why you can get them for reasonable prices. So, would it be a waste to use either for bass? No, I don't think so. I think they both have advantages. And when we did the shootout between the SX-240 and the Roland JX3P, the JX3P is a fucking awesome synth. It punches way above its price class. I thought it sounded better than the SX-240. I think most of the chat did too, which was surprising because I was expecting that SSM filter to just carry it past the finish line, but actually it seems like the Roland JX3P is just the GOAT for its price point. JX8P probably smokes even that. However, when it came to bass, that sub oscillator was real fucking nice on the SX-240. We didn't do a baseline comparison tonight just because of where we were at on time. But yeah, Brian says, because I'm strictly old school EBM. So yeah, I mean, if you want to go EBM, okay, well, this is tough because Dubstation Zero and I have this thing where it's like vintage monos are fine, but like polys are kind of where it's at. However, if you're looking for a baseline synth, you could probably, but then again, like I was about to recommend the Fermanta Polyvox, for instance, for about the same price as the Prophet 600, but then it's only a mono synth, right? And truthfully, I don't know that it's going to get there all that much better, but I do like the sound of the Polyvox, so that might be something. Like if you want to spend about that much money, if you spent a little bit more money, like $1,500, you could get a Korg MS-20, a vintage Korg MS-20. I think a modern, the Korg clone of itself, I think they go for like $600. They're smaller, of course. They're not the full size, but then again, I want to say that will make it easier to integrate with Eurorack. Dubstation could confirm that for me. But yeah, Eurorack is kind of the shit nowadays if you want to do like mono baseline-y type stuff for the price point. If you want to stay strictly vintage and you're into old school EBM, the truth is a lot of EBM basslines are FM synths. They're not analog. And so then that might take you into like Yamaha SY77 territory. That might be where you want to be. That could be kind of cool. Samplers too, but I don't know a great sampler that's going to hit the EBM thing. You can get a DSS-1 or an Ensoniq Mirage for like around $600 right now, 650, 700, 750, somewhere in there, which is a great price. But EBM, I don't know if those are exactly it. Hypothesis says the JX3P was the first analog synth I played. The first synth I owned was a DX11. Yes, yeah, DX11 weirdly might get you closer to that EBM thing. So let's see. Gingy says, what can I say? I'm an SX-240 hound. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. And interestingly, it's when we're talking about which synth sounds better, not for the price, but just better, Prophet 600, 60% of people said sounds better than the SX-240. So I can't remember all of the synths that we've shot out against the SX-240, but importantly, we've shot out the SX-240 against the Roland JX3P, which you can get for under $1,000 right now. And then also the Prophet 600, which you can get for about $1,250 right now. And with all of that in mind, it's, look, I've paid a lot of money for that synth, so I want to sell it for a lot of money. And I know when I open my mouth up on this stream, people in the vintage synth world are paying attention, which is the greatest blessing, #blessed of my life. But the thing is that I gotta be honest and just say that the SX-240 is a phenomenal synth, but when you compare it to a lot cheaper synths, it doesn't perform at its pay grade. I mean, it probably performs against a lot of other coveted vintage synths in that price range. It just happens to be that the DCO, like 2 DCO per voice synths, there's a bunch of really great 80s ones, and JX8P, 3P, those types of synths just have a pretty good thing. If you like an EBM Moog bass, Prodigy would probably be what I would go for, which you can get for like $1,400, I want to say. I really appreciate it, Dr. Synth. Have a great evening too, okay? You know, that might be the way you want to go. I think that would be it. If you want to stay vintage, that is. I mean, I guess you could get like a modern Moog. Or Moog Mavis, maybe, or something like that. But, yeah. So, the chat says 60% say Prophet 600 sounds better than the SX-240. So, it's hard to argue that. Now, having said that, there's a couple of things that, like, the envelopes just still bother me on the Prophet 600. And I think anybody who watched the stream, I don't know, quickly in chat, did anybody else feel like the envelopes were a little bit off? Or is this like a me thing? Because I could hear them opening from greater than 0. And that bothers me. I just don't love that. And so, again, it's this interesting thing where the SX-240 has a slight advantage with the filter and a slight advantage with the envelopes. But when it comes to the oscillators, the Prophet 600 smokes it. Like the lushness of the oscillators, Prophet 600 puts it to shame. Comparing that again to a synth like the Oberheim Matrix 6, which uses 3 analog high-frequency VCOs divided down to get the voices, right? You actually get a little, you get more of an analog sound from a Matrix 6 than you do on the SX-240, for sure. And that difference in lushness is substantial. Parb says, yeah, it does have some nice features, though. It can almost do the Jupiter 8 thing for less money. That's for sure. And that's a super cool thing. Chris, I actually don't know off the top of my head what an EPS 16 is going for. So that would actually be a very good recommendation if it's not too expensive. So, yeah, super fascinating tonight. I'm glad, some people in the chat said this is my favorite type of stream. I'm glad you enjoy it because for me, this is the most fruitful type of stream. But I do know that the algorithm fucking hates this type of content. My views are like way down the past month or so, and I think it's just because I've kind of been focusing on this type of stuff, plus more software, which people were interested in OB1, but maybe not as much as usual, it seems. So my views have been fucked up recently. And when you're doing this type of thing, like, I'd love to tell you that it doesn't bother me, but it fucks with your head a little bit. But what I kind of decided, I was like, you know what? There's going to be rises and falls to the tide of YouTubing. And I'm just going to fucking do my thing and make content that I enjoy. That's always what I did from the beginning, was like, I'm just going to do what I want. And I think that's where people will get the most value anyways. So I'm not going to change much. I do have a crazy huge video coming out. I'm hoping to Christ I can get it done by Saturday. It's been such an undertaking. I think the last time I looked, the video is going to be 1 hour and 46 minutes long. And it's like an exhaustive analysis of the vintage synth market right now. Looking at the prices of over 40 vintage synthesizers and talking about, like, if you want a Jupiter 8, what's the best synth as a comparison? If you want a Juno 106, what's the best synth? If you want a JD800, what's the best synth alternatives? And I think that will be hopefully useful to people. So it's been just a grind on that one, though. And it's especially when you sink so much time into something like 1 hour and 46 minute video. I'm like, and I'm talking as fast as I can about this stuff. So it's like jam-packed with content. Hopefully people will enjoy it, but if they don't, that's okay. But if you know, it's a lot of time that goes into this stuff. So I'm hoping. Theosophy says this is a refreshing change from just going through patches, though. Yeah, no, but you know what's funny though, Theosophy, is that or Taosophy, the algorithm likes it. Like if you're like, I could just upload like, here's the patches on the fucking D50 and just upload that video, but for every synth that I have, and people would watch it, and probably I'd get more views that way. But I also, that's like soul crushing to me. And sometimes it's fun, but you know, I don't know. Somebody else can do that. So, Spiritual Anarchist asks, what do you think of the Moog Muse? I keep saying this. Excuse me, guys. Some article said, I think it was like Music Radar or something. Sorry if I'm getting it wrong, but like they're like, oh, the Moog Muse is going to be competitively priced at $4,300. And I think that's a fucking joke. I mean, this idea that $4,300 is competitively priced when you're comparing it against like the Polybrute 12 and the Super Gemini, right? We're living in a blessed time with some really powerful, big muscle car synths. Moog Muse looks like it has some really cool features. Looks like it's going to be good, but it doesn't seem to be quite as powerful as the Moog 1, and considering it's got half the voices and approximately half the price, it doesn't really feel like a big step forward. But I could be wrong. Spiritual, I don't know. I might be off about that. New album, fuck the algorithm. Yes. I will, Gingy. I appreciate it, though. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to feel sorry for myself. I am the luckiest human being on the planet that I get to do this. And there's been so much support from you guys. And frankly, if I was just doing this for you guys and the channel never grew, I'd be good with that. I'd just keep doing this, right? Because I love synths and vintage synths and talking about filters and shit. But I do feel like there's an important part of like trying to keep the channel growing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to get so disconnected that I'm not making sure to like push myself too. I guess that's more the thing. Yeah, 4,300 just doesn't sound great. I was hoping they were going to try to hit the $2,000 mark, right? So a $2,000 polyphonic Moog would be awesome. But they're basically charging North Carolina prices with like, you know, I hate to say it this way, but it's outsourced to China, right? It's In Music owns them now. So there's not that same like motivation where at least when you bought a Moog 1, you would be like, well, this was like hand assembled in the Carolinas. That's why it's so expensive. Now it's like, it just kind of feels like they're still charging the premium. Then again, maybe we'll have some tricks up its sleeve. Maybe it'll sound really good. I don't know. That's my first thoughts on the Muse. I hope to be wrong about it. Jack asks about the Prophet X as a Rompler. I think the Prophet X is a sick synth. It's held its value. I wish you could get them a little cheaper, because that would make it a little bit more compelling. But it keeps that value because sequential synths are just known for quality. And I do think that, you know, when you start getting the granular and everything, it's a really cool synth. So, yeah. I appreciate it, Chris. Yeah. Hypothesis, yeah, is it... Well, I don't know how much the Moog 1 8 voice was going for at the end. I think it was going for more than 4,300, but, like, still. Like, what the fuck? I don't even think Muse had polyphonic aftertouch, although I could be wrong about that. It just doesn't seem that great, yeah. Bob Castro says, I'll be honest, I love the synth sounds, but I do enjoy the patches and presets. And see, I appreciate your honesty, because that's kind of what I meant about like audience capture. I don't want to be so myopic that I'm just focused on my 25 friends, you guys that hang out every time. I want to make sure I'm creating content that's valuable to everybody. And I do think that like playing through the presets is valuable, but I also just am going to do what I'm going to fucking do. Spiritual Anarchist wants a Juno 106 without the voice chip problem. Also known as an Alpha Juno 2, maybe. I really love the Alpha Junos. So I would check those out for sure, Anarchist, because they're very phenomenal sounding synths. Without a fully run people, it doesn't bother me. And you probably want to get some sort of programmer for it. Although, if you don't mind being near a computer, Talfa is an incredible programmer for it. And it's cheap and sounds great on its own. So, Hypothesis said it was over 10K Canadian. Yeah, but that was for the 16, not the 8 voice, right? Wendigo says it's like the new roads. It just gets too expensive for what we get nowadays. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, the algorithm just fucks you up. That's, you know, and that's okay. I feel like overall the algorithm treats me very well, so I'm not complaining. I'm just complaining. So on that note, I think that's a perfect way to end this stream. I hope you guys have a phenomenal week. Continue to be excellent, guys, and I will see you in the next video.